Okay, I'll first turn to the Roberts brothers, and who would like to go first? Supervisor Dave Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For over 20 years, BIOCOM has represented one of the most vital industries here in San Diego, and I'm really proud. BIOCOM is headquartered in my district, and it's home to many companies and employees. And I want to thank Supervisor Ron Roberts for partnering with me. You've been a great champion of this for many years also. But in December, I had an opportunity to sit down with Joe Panetta and talk about what more we could do. And he was telling me about this report that had just come out, and if we could help spotlight the results of that report. And so Ron and I talked and said, why don't we bring him to the board and give an update to this board? But BIOCOM offers assistance to local companies, large and small, and many of these people benefit from the expertise. I actually came from an association, and before I was elected to the Board of Supervisors, I know the valuable work that associations provide to their members. And I can't think of a more important industry, not only to my district, but to the entire county of San Diego than what BIOCOM provides. And so I'm really pleased that they're going to be here today giving us an update. And I'm going to continue working with my colleague Ron and others to make sure that we do all we can to continue trying to help BIOCOM be a growing industry here in San Diego County.
Ron, did you want to make some opening comments?
I would, and I'm pleased to have Joe Panetta here along with Jimmy Jackson to really to fill us in on the current state of the industry here in San Diego. Some of you might be aware, but in the 80s when I was practicing architecture, we actually had a specialized part of our firm that did nothing but design laboratories for biotechnology companies. All of the work was in Northern California then, very little in San Diego. And Bill Otterson, who was one of the founders of Connect and really was associated with the biotech industry in its infancy, used to introduce me by saying he knew what biotech was before there was biotech. To see how this has gone from something was in its infancy was being developed somewhere else to the tremendous growth that we've seen here in San Diego is really not just because of the companies themselves and the people, but it's also the organizational structures that have encouraged this and supported us and lobbied for it. And BIOCOM is certainly at the top of that list. Joe Panetta has become the face of BIOCOM in San Diego as in his work over many years now and his efforts on behalf of the biotechnology community. He and I, just under 2 years ago, traveled together with a group of biotechnology people in China, where I tried to introduce him to some of the people that I knew. And we had I think a very significant visit as compared to some of his earlier trips, certainly. But it shows you the length that he will go to in order to support the growth of this industry. There's a lot of opportunities. It's a global, absolutely a global perspective that's needed to make these things happen. And I'm pleased that he's here today to share with us some of his insights into what the current state is and where we might be going in the future.
Great. Thank you both for bringing this forward. And Joe, would you please come forward? This is a tremendous industry that's developed in San Diego, and thank you so much for taking your time today.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jacob, for making the time on the agenda for me today. I think it's probably been a good 10 years since I've been here, and remarkably, while I've gotten a little grayer, you all seem to look as young as you did 10 years ago. But there is one new face on the board, and I want to acknowledge Supervisor Dave Roberts for taking the time to come and meet with us, to come to our breakfast meeting in December. And I want to say how impressed I was that you stayed for the entire meeting on a wonkish topic such as working with the Food and Drug Administration. So thank you from one policy wonk to another. We really appreciate your time with us in December, Dave, and we look forward to working with you. But I also want to say that we've had the opportunity to talk and work with all of you in the last 10 years since I've been here, and I want to thank all of you for your commitment to the life science industry here in San Diego. And I also want to say how great it was to sit through all the proclamations that we had this morning. And I could find a way that each of those groups related in some way to us here in the life science industry, whether it's ethnically or culturally. And the women who were here, obviously I didn't get the Go Red memo this morning, but the women who were here on behalf of Go Red, you know, our mission in the life science industry is to improve patient health and quality of life. So that partnership that we have with groups such as the Sulpizio Heart Center is very important to us. So let me take you back in history, and Ron began to talk about this a little bit, to the creation of BIOCOM, which was actually the result of a water crisis that we had back in the early 1990s. And ironically, we're back in a water crisis again today. City Council at the time was seriously considering strict water rationing, to the point where we in the industry were faced with the possibility that our water would be turned off periodically without notice throughout the day. Now, the life science industry is heavily dependent on water, so the prospect of having our water turned off concerned us greatly, and the criticality of having that water got us to work with the City Council, and at the time, Ron was a City Council member, who helped to lead our efforts and work with the City Council to ensure that we would have a continued supply of water. And we worked out an arrangement also, I think, under a program called the Water for Industry program that benefited the city and benefited us, in which we would agree to use reclaimed water in the future with the promise that we would continue to receive a consistent supply of water in the industry. So more than 20 years later, here we are. We've got more than 600 dues-paying members today. Those members represent the diversity of life science firms throughout the county. We're one of the 2 largest regional life science associations in the country, and that's representative of how important this life science industry is here in San Diego. According to a report that was issued last year by Jones Lang LaSalle, we are the 2nd largest life science cluster in the country, thereby the 2nd largest life science cluster in the world, because the United States is the leader in life science. So I'm here today to tell you that our life science industry is alive and well. It's thriving, it's growing, it's diverse. In fact, it's growing in new important ways that are going to be critical to the growth of the economy here in San Diego in the future. Let me define for you first what we mean when we talk about the life science industry, because a lot of the time we think of life science as simply being a focus on drugs. But it's not. It's comprised also of medical devices and diagnostics, various types of biotherapeutics, biorenewables, which I'll talk about in a minute, and universities, basic research institutes, and the service firms, such as the architecture firms that Ron referred to that help to design our laboratories. Some regions across the country have developed a foothold in 1 or 2 or 3 of these areas, but what's unique about San Diego is that we've developed a foothold across the board, and that these various subsectors are collaborative and interactive, and that's really the key to our uniqueness as a life science cluster here. We have what we call an ecosystem of innovation that's truly unique to San Diego. And this is an economy that's coveted throughout the country and throughout the world. And as CEO of BIOCOM for the last 15 years, I've entertained numerous delegations from across the U.S. and from across the world who come and ask us, how can we build what we have here in San Diego? I've had the opportunity to travel. Ron mentioned our trip to China. We've been to Europe, we've been to Asia, we've been to Australia numerous times to build this San Diego life science brand across the world. And that effort includes bringing the talent and the investment and the companies that we need to continue to build the industry here. So I salute Supervisor Roberts for his vision in going with us to China and introducing us to folks over there. At the time he was chair, and I realized how important in China it is to be a chairman. When you're a chairman, you get a lot of attention in China, and we got a lot of attention there. More than 10 years ago, with then Mayor Dick Murphy, we signed a sister city biotechnology agreement with our sister city, Yokohama. And since then, we've had numerous fruitful interactions with their biotech industry. Most recently, we entertained their new mayor, Fumiko Hayashi, at one of our BIOCOM breakfast meetings. Our industry truly wants to be interactive with industries in other parts of the world because this is a globally competitive industry, and we need to be a globally competitive city, whether it's biotech or anything else that we do here. So we bring a highly educated, highly skilled, and well-compensated workforce to this region, and it has a strong multiplier effect across the economy. So let me give you some facts and figures, if I may. According to Sandag's 2012 Traded Industry Cluster Report, biotechnology and pharmaceuticals was the highest paying industry in the region at $107,000 per year on average wage for the industry. The next highest paying cluster is also a subcluster of ours, and that's medical devices at $99,500 per year. We're going to give you copies of, you have a copy, I believe, of our 2012 report. Jimmy Jackson has given me our update, our 2013 one here, and we'll make sure you get copies of this. We've gone electronic, so we don't have a paper copy of that for you, just a summary, and the rest of it is online. You can access it there. So I'm going to give you some figures from the 2012 report. These are upheld in the 2013 report, and in fact, we've seen some growth. So this industry employs about 60,000 people here in San Diego, but indirectly, it produces another 35,000 jobs and induces another 122,000 jobs across the economy. So, taken all together, we account for a whopping 218,000 jobs in San Diego County. One of the goals of our industry is to create a homegrown workforce. As you know, it can sometimes be a bit of a challenge to persuade people, regardless of the weather, to come to San Diego because of some of the costs of living that we incur here. So I also want to acknowledge and thank Supervisor Cox for working with me when I was at the San Diego Workforce Partnership chairing the board, and some of the programs that we developed there as he was on the WIB board to focus students on the importance of this industry. And we created a program there called the Life Science Summer Institute, which was an internship program that still exists today for students, and we've put more than 300 students through that program now in summer internships, and it's a very, very competitive program. We actually receive about 300 applications per year for about 35 internships that we can provide. Just as importantly, there is some type of life science facility in each of the 5 supervisoral districts. So with this impact of 218,000 jobs, we're spread across all of San Diego County. There's much more to this narrative too. When the defense industry began to gradually pull back in the early 1990s, it was the life science industry that began to fill the gap back then. And today, a large part of the San Diego economy is this life science industry that has filled that gap. During the recession, our industry grew in jobs. While overall employment was down by 6%, our employment grew over that time. In fact, 20% in biopharmaceuticals and 21% in medical devices during that period. The economic numbers are just one small part of our story. The other is that our companies are all here and our employees go to work every day to improve quality of life and to improve health, to make our lives better. And we typically think of our industry, as I said, in terms of developing new therapeutics and medical devices. But I want to tell you about a new and very important and promising sector of life science here in San Diego that's evolving quickly and consists already of more than a dozen companies. And we call this field biorenewables. One such BIOCOM member company in this biorenewables field is a company called Genomatica. Genomatica has developed a method to make plastic using bio-based products, and they do this in a fermenter rather than a chemical manufacturing plant. Another company, Verdesign, is using a similar biological process to produce the precursor molecules for nylon. So again, nylon in a fermenter instead of a chemical manufacturing plant. 2 other companies, Synthetic Genomics and Solana, are among the many local companies attempting to make biorenewable fuels using either microorganisms or the wealth of algae that we have here. The biorenewables industry got its start back in the 1980s. Back then I was with a company called Bicogen, and we produced the first bio-based pesticides to replace chemical insecticides. We later incorporated those genetics into crops and produced the first crop seeds with built-in insect resistance. Our legacy, though, of course, has been in the life-changing discoveries that have been made by this cluster in developing drugs, and that goes back to Biotech, which some of you remember developed the now standard still PSA test for prostate cancer here in San Diego. In the 1990s, Agaron developed Virusept, the first successful protease inhibitor for HIV and AIDS treatment, and that was followed not long after by IDEC's successful introduction of Rituxan, the first monoclonal antibody-based drug for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Kalydeco, the first FDA-approved drug to treat the underlying cause of certain forms of cystic fibrosis, was developed here in San Diego by Aurora Pharmaceuticals, and that drug will save thousands of lives. In the medical device arena, we're home to NuVasive. Here's a sports reference for you. Our Hall of Famer, Bill Walton, credits NuVasive treating him for the symptoms of back pain that made life impossible for him. And as you know, Bill is alive and well and active today. Our molecular diagnostics companies are developing highly accurate tests for everything from pandemic diseases to cancer. In fact, the first such protein-based tests were developed by GenProbe, recently acquired by Hologic, and those tests screen approximately 80% of the nation's donated blood supply. San Diego County is home to two companies that are gatekeepers to the new and very exciting field of personalized medicine that will bring down the cost of healthcare in the future. Those companies, Life Technologies, which as of yesterday became Life Science Solutions, Inc., and Illumina are world leaders in taking the once prohibitively expensive task of sequencing a person's genome and making it accessible and affordable. In fact, Illumina announced last month that it has now reduced the cost of sequencing an entire genome to under $1,000. So the implications of being able to design treatments that will work for a person's exact disease state can't be overstated. The cost savings would be significantly lowered with highly targeted, highly effective therapeutics, and the enhanced quality of life for most patients who would enjoy shorter, more effective treatment cycles would result in increased productivity, less time off from work, or simply the ability to continue to work in many cases. A result of this innovative culture is that large biopharmaceutical companies need a significant presence in San Diego or they risk being left behind. 2 years ago, Merck had a major role in creating a nonprofit research institute, the California Institute for Biomedical Research, or Caliber. Caliber joined the many prestigious research institutes in our life science ecosystem, and Janssen Labs, a division of Johnson & Johnson, turned part of J&J's campus in La Jolla into a flagship incubator where fledgling life science companies can operate independently in a very collaborative environment, which allows them to focus on research rather than having to build physical infrastructure. That incubator has attracted companies from all over the world and is operating at full capacity today with 30 companies, and it's become a model of success in creating and developing small life science companies. Last but not least, I have to mention GlaxoSmithKline, which announced its location here with a specific charge that its team invest at least $495 million to develop a minimum of 10 new life science companies here in San Diego with local partner Avalon Ventures. That commitment to our community is a true measure of how vibrant our San Diego life science economy has become. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our leadership in stem cell research here in San Diego, where 10 years ago in California, our voters passed Proposition 71. Today, here in San Diego, the Sanford Consortium for Regenerative Medicine stands as a testament to that investment, where 5 of our research institutes operate collaboratively under one roof doing stem cell research. In June, we'll welcome the worldwide industry here to San Diego, as for the 3rd time we host a Biotechnology Industry Organization's annual convention. That'll bring together more than 15,000 top executives of the industry, as well as those who work as bench scientists. So we're very proud that the convention is here, returning to San Diego, and I hope that each of you will join us for the Global Leaders Reception that we'll be holding there as we welcome officials from throughout the U.S. and throughout the world to San Diego. So thanks again. This is just a brief snapshot of the industry in San Diego County. To this point, the county's largely been our ally in the growth of this industry. As Dave Roberts said, we want to talk with you more about how we can work together. We're very appreciative of your support. There are regulatory issues within your jurisdiction that we're vigilant in monitoring, as well as other types of opportunities to support the growth of this industry. And we're confident that this board will continue to work with us to recognize the importance of this industry that brings $12.3 billion in direct spending to San Diego County and its businesses. So on behalf of our board of directors, again, I thank Supervisors Roberts and Roberts for inviting us to come, and I thank you, Chairwoman Jacob, for making time on the agenda for us.